Jonathan Pollard finally comes home to Israel. Jonathan Pollard is an American Jewish man who worked as a former Intel data analyst with the United States government. This week, the parole board has decided not to renew his parole. In other words, he can take off that bracelet that had the data of where he goes all the time. And tracking him, we all know about tracking now in coronavirus era. Well, this is a parole bracelet that tracked him for the past 5 years when he actually physically was released out of prison, of which he served 30 years, 3 decades, more than 30 years, as a espionage criminal found guilty by America, spying for Israel, giving military and intel security secrets back to Israel as he was employed. The Jonathan Pollard story has caused a lot of friction over the past 3 decades for Israel and American relations. That's quite understood. And the reasoning of Jonathan Pollard coming back to Israel to be a big story is because Jonathan Pollard is not equally welcome on both sides. There are many Israelis that feel that he should come home and he should be welcome home. There are some Israelis that feel he should have a grand celebration, and others feel quite the opposite or somewhere in the middle. So Israel actually is very torn, and most of this is because Israel is very careful and wants to appease the American sentiments going forward. If we are too Jubilee minded with Pollard coming back to Israel, then it may upset the Americans, is the concern, and especially the new incoming administration, if in fact Biden does take the presidency. While growing up, Jonathan Pollard did spend time at the premises of a Catholic university. His father had doings there. Now, he may have heard the good news. He may have rejected it. We may never know. He may not have rejected it. The fact remains that Israel is the place that God promised to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jonathan Pollard is a son of Israel. Biblically, Israel has had a muddy past, those of Abraham's seed. Israel is not chosen because she is the best. She's chosen because God has chosen her, and it is His grace. And perhaps many do not want to see a celebratory homecoming, but Israel is the place where Jews belong ultimately if God has His way. In Genesis 15:18 declares to Abraham, the Lord God declares to Abraham, "To your descendants I will give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." God later confirms His promise to Abraham's son Isaac, and later Isaac's son Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Mr. Pollard is within his rights coming back to Israel.